Right, good morning. Welcome to the latest edition of Procurement Pulse, our holiday special, we like to call it. Quick bit of housekeeping before we start. All cameras and microphones have been disabled, and this webinar is being recorded and your name may be visible. We will be editing the recording after the event, which we will then upload onto our YouTube channel, so check it out, HCSA Procurement Services. I'm Richard, part of the direct channel team here at HCSA Procurement Services. You'll be pleased to hear that myself and MJ will not be doing much speaking today on this edition. And why is that, MJ?
Thank you, Richard. So yes, my name's MJ. I'm part of the direct channel team at HCSA Procurement Services. Well, we've got a special guest today. We've got two actually, so we're really excited about this one. A fortnight ago, there was a conference up in Manchester, and me and a couple of my colleagues, John and James, attended. So we're going to give you a bit of insight. Well, James will be, and I'll be chipping in a little bit as to the sort of takeaways from that conference. It was really good information, especially well dedicated to the NHS sector. So without further ado, we'll be getting James added on so he can help us give us an insight as to what happened a fortnight ago. And a little bit later on, we've got a special guest who'll be giving a bit of a teaser as to what will be going on next month. So, James, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate you giving us some of your time. So, if you're happy, we'll get straight into it. So, can you tell us a bit more about HCSA and the NHS commercial function, please?
Yeah, of course. Morning, everyone. Thanks for having me on, MJ and Rich. So, yeah, the HCSA are a charitable organisation. They represent procurement up and down the country in the UK. As you probably know, the NHS is a big old beast. It's the largest employer in Europe, employs 1.3 million people. It spends £35 billion a year, and it has about 80,000 suppliers. So that gives you some sort of idea of the scale. And as you know, it's never far from the news in terms of what's going on there. So it directly affects everyone. So yeah, the HCSA represent all of those people involved in procurement and supply chain. They run regional conferences, training events, seminars, all through the year. And we attended the Winter Conference a couple of weeks ago, as MJ said. And it's a great opportunity really to meet with those people. You meet with procurement staff from very senior sort of ICS leads right down to some junior staff. There's lots of suppliers there exhibiting their wares, so you get to understand new products, new services. Yeah, it's just a really good networking opportunity. And they also have a lot of speaking events, so you can get to hear from suppliers and buyers about latest change in procurement technology, regulations, and especially from the NHS commercial function. And the commercial function is a fairly new established body led by Jackie Rock, and she talks about the new framework that they're implementing, which is going to directly affect everyone within those procurement organisations. So yeah, it's a really valuable couple of days. We get a lot out of it. We try and do it every year. And it's just really interesting to hear all the challenges that they're facing on top of new procurement regulations coming into effect and all sorts of things that are coming down the track. So yeah, great couple of days.
Excellent. I've got one little question actually. So where do you think sort of LifeCycle and KCS fit into this?
Yeah, so in terms of LifeCycle, as I said, we've been attending the conference probably for five years or so now. For those of you that aren't familiar with us, we joined CSG and KCS at the end of August. We provide contract management and procurement services, predominantly in the NHS, but also in the wider procurement space. We've got about 50 NHS customers in England, and that's growing all the time. And we provide category management really to in third-party spend in estates, facilities, some IT and asset finance. Since joining KCS, we've worked really hard with you guys to try and align our services, so we're familiar with all the frameworks that you guys provide, and we can start to run mini competitions and further competitions via those frameworks. So dovetailing those two things together, it's quite a powerful offering for the NHS, because as I'll go into some of the challenges that they're facing, we can really help them out in some of those areas around resource, access to markets, competition, etc.
Yeah, it was really interesting for me to see all different types of organizations come into that sort of space and sort of listen to different outtakes from seniors within the sector. One of the key sort of takeaways from me was all about sustainability. I don't know if you remember the presentation by Professor Butter, and how he sort of was trying to channel a new way of doing things rather than the sort of throwaway culture. They're trying to look at sustainable practices moving forward. So those are that was one of the highlights from me. What were some of the highlights for yourself?
Yeah, so the sustainability challenge has always been there in the NHS, and they are constantly trying to improve things. And the new social value regulations are really helping them to drive some of that through. The opening presentation from Jackie Rock, as I mentioned, was quite enlightening. They're trying to do a huge amount of work. They're implementing a strategic framework, which is complex. There's 26 different areas that they're looking at, but broadly covers 4 themes. So those are people, digital and transparency, ways of working, and influence and scale. What that means in reality, we'll sort of wait and see, but the people challenge came up time and time again, around resource, capacity, skills, ongoing learning and development. And that's something that we're really keen, us as a business, and I know you guys are as well, in plugging some of those gaps, because we have that resource, we have that engine. So it's interesting to see how we fit into those national strategic objectives. Again, digital and transparency. We have a digital platform which we use for everything we work on. We also make that available, that data available to our customers, and we can start to integrate with some of the other systems such as Atomis. So again, we're aligning there. Influence and scale is always a challenge for the NHS because of that amount they spend, because of their size and influence. Sometimes people think that should mean they should be able to drive absolutely best price across the entire market. It's never that simple. There's always pockets of different behavior and needs, but they're trying to standardize that as much as possible. And again, the way we work, we're able to look at across collaborative areas and take a much more strategic approach to what they're buying to start to influence suppliers in a way that capitalizes on that size and scale.
Brilliant. So what I'd like to do now, actually, James, if I can, is can you just tell us a bit more about lifecycle servicing offerings? What I'll do is I'll just share a couple of slides that you've obviously given us. Bear with me 1 second, and then you can really go through and just give us a bit of an outline of who you are and what you do. There you go. You should be able to see that now. So over to you, James.
Thanks, Rich. So yeah, hopefully, as I've explained, LifeCycle Management Group, LMG as we're known, are a specialist in procurement and category management and contract management. That really involves 3 parts of the service: analyse, procure and perform. The analysis bit involves lots of data, lots of spreadsheets, lots of reaching out to suppliers to validate information. There's a huge amount of upfront work we do to actually understand what customers are spending and where they're spending it. That then informs our procurement plans, where, as I've said, we take that sort of strategic, long-term, holistic view of what people are buying and how they can achieve best value. We have teams of people that then deliver those procurements from end to end, so right from developing the specification through to contract award. And all of our contracts we set up in a way that allows them to be managed downline. So this is another really key theme and something that came out of the NHS and the new procurement regs, is that need for contract management. So not just letting a contract and forgetting about it, putting in some teeth, some KPIs that you can monitor, that you can look back in 6 months, 12 months time and say, yes, that absolutely met everything that I intended it to meet, or no, it didn't, and why didn't it, and what did we do about it? So very high level, but yeah, that's the service in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, James. Really appreciate your time today.
Perfect.
And all of that information. We'll be sending out your contact details if you want to get in touch. Yeah, thanks again for all that insight today.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
No problem.
Cheers, James. So yeah, look out for posts as to this particular webinar that we'll be putting up on LinkedIn. Now, we're just going to do a quick insight as to what's going on next month. Really excited about this. There's a particular product which has sort of recently been introduced. Some are comparing it to how sort of Apple iPhone sort of changed the whole mobile handset market. It's that big. And what we've got, if we can magically add on our special guest today, which is Keith. He's going to be giving us a bit of a teaser as to what's going to be discussed in next month's webinar. So thank you for joining us, Keith. Really appreciate you taking some time out to speak to us today. So tell us all about it. Is it all it's meant to be?
Yes, I mean, firstly, thank you for your time today and inviting me to this session. I'm really delighted to be here. And I think if I take one step back really quickly, is over the last few months, there's been a lot of noise in the industry, in the IT industry and market around AI. And earlier in the year, it was all ChatGPT, wasn't it? And I'm sure most people on the call have played with it in one degree or the other. What really has happened since then is there's this sort of two waves of AI that we're seeing. There's open AI, which is where it's on a project by project basis, and we're seeing public sector bodies look at that, and it might be for a very specific use case, and we're working with those. And then what we saw at the beginning of November was the general availability to public sector customers and most wider sector organisations as well of Microsoft Copilot. We are one of the Jumpstart partners, so I'm lucky enough to be using Copilot in advance of this. And it's been really interesting to see it firsthand what it means to me on a day-to-day basis, and how rubbish I was at using some technology in the before that Copilot has really helped me with. But what I've really loved is the engagement with customers who are trying to understand what it means to them, and sitting with them and seeing them just really quickly understand where use cases could be. And this is not just standard use cases, it's actually also what it means to their staff from a well-being perspective, which I've really loved. So one of the things that I very much suggested to yourselves, obviously KCS is a strategic relationship that we have, is actually whether we should look to run a webinar. And the reason I suggested that is, traditionally when Phoenix runs webinars, we get maybe 20 or 30 people turn up to them. Over the last few months, we've had one Copilot webinar that had 400 registrations. We did one to the charity sector recently, had 200 plus. So the interest is there. And yeah, I've got a few slides prepped. What I've got to be very clear on is I'm not one of our demo team or adoption and change management specialists. I'm the sales director at Phoenix, so I very much can talk about it. I can base it on use cases I've got. I've really cut down a slide deck which I'll whiz through. If I give an example of a council we had in our offices a couple of weeks ago, that was a 3-hour session to take them through all aspects of how Copilot could look at what it could mean to them. And there's various things you need to think about as well. Yes, it's a Microsoft product, so as you'd expect, you can just plug and off you go. But there's a lot of readiness you need to do first, and adoption and change management afterwards is important. But general availability is beginning of November. Customers are already buying it, and customers are already looking at what technical readiness means to them. So if it's okay, I'll dive into a few slides. It's incredibly high level right now. What we plan to do with the webinar, and I'll be back to KCS this afternoon with dates, is actually do a live demo and really show you the power of it, because that's when it really brings it to life. So without further ado, please bear with me with my rubbish technical skills, and I'll just bring up a few slides that we can just take you through. So can you see that? Is that coming up in front of you? Yeah. So really quickly, I'll just run through it. So I think one of the things that we need to be aware of is it's called Copilot for a reason, right? This isn't a case that it's there to do everything for you. It is your AI assistant at work. Great, I think that's something we need to stress, because for me personally, when I use it, it very much acts like that. And what Copilot will do is provide assistance across core common Microsoft Office applications. There are various Copilots. What I'm talking about today is the M365 Copilot, which works with the M365 platform of products. I think one of the things that you'll also maybe have seen, maybe there's some scaremongering around AI, or some of the things that I think is actually really important to people as well, is having AI that is responsible, ethical, compliant, and is used. And for what Microsoft have built with Copilot, it absolutely ticks all those boxes. It is absolutely built on a comprehensive best practice approach. So, for example, for when I'm using AI, or Copilot within the Phoenix environment, I have the same access rights that I would on other. It mirrors the other access rights that I have. So there's no chance of me seeing things I shouldn't have. I'm going to dive into it and talk about some of the aspects of the products really quickly, just to give you, and I'll give you my personal experience of them as well, which hopefully will bring it to life. M365 Chat. M365 Chat is really interesting. So what I have in my Teams bar is M365 Chat. If I click on that, I could say, please show me the email correspondence, or summarize the email correspondence between myself and Richard, so I know what I'm talking about, what day I'm talking about Copilot on the KCS Pulse. I could also use it to say, okay, please open Word up and help me write a job spec. Or I could use it to say, okay, look at the Teams chat between myself and another member of staff at Phoenix. Please summarize the meetings over the last few days. Another thing I did just recently was I had a PowerPoint presentation come through to me from another part of Phoenix, which had about 30 slides in it. I asked it to summarize it for me. So actually, before I even opened it, I had a summary of what was in there and the key points to take from it. Really, really powerful. So that's one of the things I use on an ongoing basis. Copilot in Teams. Again, incredibly powerful, and we use this quite extensively. So as example for today, if we had Copilot running in the background for our session, it would transcribe, it would capture it, it would take the actions, which it could summarize back to us. If someone joins late, it can recap the meeting for them. Really, really powerful. So, we've used it in meetings where actually, you have a good meeting, everyone thinks they've got the actions from it, but when you ask Copilot to summarize the actions at the end, and it does it perfectly. If not, gives you more that you might have missed. So really, really powerful. Moving on further. So bear with me, this is interactive one, so I need to make sure I get it right for you. What it normally shows is that some of the demos in the background, as you can see. Copilot in Outlook, again, I find this really useful. I get a ridiculous amount of emails every day, to the point I'm not even going to share because it's verging on embarrassing. But what it does mean is if there are things that I need to look at, or things where I think I'm slightly behind, or I've seen a variety of emails come in on the same sort of topic, I can ask Copilot to summarize them for me, which actually has been really, really useful. If you think about, I suppose one of the things that I find when using Copilot, and actually some of my colleagues are, is it saves time in everything we do. So, if everything you do, you can save 5-10 minutes here or there, or 20 or 30 minutes here or there throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, that actually makes a very big difference. Copilot in Word, again, as you'd expect, it gives you an opportunity to really both interrogate documents you've got, but also format, draft. Really, really clever. It can take a variety of content and also turn it into a document in a format that you'd like it to look like. Copilot in Excel. Now, I will be the first to admit that I am traditionally shocking when it comes to using Excel, yet it is a big part of what I normally have to do day to day. And whatever sort of training I go on, I still find I struggle with it afterwards. Copilot helps me tremendously here. It allows me to interrogate data in a language that I can just ask it to do so, rather than having to worry about trying to dive into very detailed formulas. So I can use it to take data and draft pivot charts for me, for example, things that I appreciate may be very straightforward for a lot of people. For me, they absolutely aren't. So that's been really good for me to use. And PowerPoint, what you'll find when we do the demo in January, the PowerPoint one is a really compelling and really clever piece of work, in that you can take a Word document and you can ask it to create a PowerPoint from it, and it'll create an absolutely feature-rich PowerPoint presentation with graphics in a great format in a way that I could never do it, and it'll do it in about 20 or 30 seconds. Incredibly powerful. If you know, when I've been sitting, I mean, across all the aspects of what I've been showing here, use cases across the public sector just spring up. So if I go back to some of the other points we've talked about, summarising, I don't know, council decision notices, or taking decision records or workflows within a business and trying to understand and put together a PowerPoint presentation that can be shared with leadership teams, really powerful. And then from a Phoenix point of view, obviously there's an awful lot we can do there in relation to provide more one-on-one training in relation to it, in relation to the product set, and deeper dives into both the technical readiness that people do need and the adoption and change management. But what I have done there is, in the matter of 5 minutes, taken you through a very summarized 3 and a bit hour presentation to give you a flavor of Copilot. And I suppose that the reason that obviously I reached out is we had a lot of incoming conversations around it. And I suppose if I had to liken where my mindset is regarding Copilot, is, without making myself sound too old, I remember, you know, as cloud came in, and I remember as Office 365 started to land, the buzz around that and what it meant of different ways of working. This, from a productivity basis, feels like that. You know, I think, you know, this feels like there's a wave there, and it's so, I guess, refreshing and interesting to sit in sessions where customers just think how this could help them in their businesses. And I love the maturity of the approach, where this isn't a case that just means we can put more work on people. 100% hasn't been that. This is actually, how can we work more efficiently? How can we do better? How can we deliver better service? And how can we make sure that our staff are not being stretched and working, you know, outside the environment? I think if you roll forward, it's a technology that will also affect the job market, because if you work for an organisation that has Copilot and you're seeing the benefits of it, that might be a question you're asking your next employer whether they have it or not, and that might impact your decision-making process. So I've spoken a lot there, and I've whizzed through it. I hope that gave you a flavour. Happy to answer any questions, but I do think a deeper dive in January will provide you a much more richer understanding of what the technology is capable of.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect, Keith. To be fair, it is, you know, it's such a massive thing, and we've obviously talked about it a little bit, and you know, I could just see MJ's eyes lighting up there when he showed him some of the stuff you can do in Excel. And
yeah,
so
I don't think I've said
wow. It's going to help.
Yeah. I don't think I've said wow so many times in 5 minutes in my life. So
yeah,
maybe
so
I'm easily impressed. But that was definitely a great insight. I'm looking forward to the January edition. But really appreciate your time, and we hope to see you again in January, Keith, again.
Yeah, for sure. I will. Obviously, Richard, I tried to send the slides over to you yesterday, but it's quite a big file, so I was struggling to do so. But I'll potentially share it with you from a OneDrive link, and if you want to do anything with it, that's fine. If any questions crop up, by all means, fire them over, and I'll pick them up from there. But no, hopefully that was a teaser. Really appreciate you letting me gate crash your session today. I hope that was of value.
We love a guest. We love a guest on the show.
Super. It's always a pleasure working with you. So, any questions on the back of it, please, by all means, push them my way.
No worries. All right, Keith, lovely. Thank you so much as well for your time. So that's it. The final episode of Procurement Pulse for 2023. So firstly, we'd like to thank James and Keith for their input today. It's been really helpful. Saves me and MJ talking a lot, which is always good for us, because I'm sure you get bored of our voices sometimes. We'd like to thank everybody for your continued support throughout the year, and hopefully for the next year. A few special mentions as well before we go. I'd like to thank JB, who's our designer, who designs our Procurement Pulse slides, as you can see, and does all the little bits and bobs for us. And also Josh, who is basically our producer. He's on the show now, who gets all the comms and marketing sorted out for every episode and uploads the video onto YouTube once he's done a bit of editing. So for me, it's hope you have a fantastic Christmas break, a fantastic new year. We look forward to seeing you next year. Obviously, we'll have a Procurement Pulse in January, date to be decided. Look out for some comms. We'll obviously be doing a webinar with Keith around the Copilot, which again is going to be a really good thing, and hopefully you can all join us on that. So for me, it's have a great time, and over to MJ.
Yeah, thank you very much to everyone who's supported us by joining us for those 20-25 minutes every month. It does really make it worthwhile for us when the numbers are there. We can get those good messages out to everyone as best we can. Yeah, thank you to everyone who's supported put this together. It's been really helpful, and valuable insights like that. It's not easy to access that sort of thing. So hopefully we've made a good start this year, and we'll move on to bigger and better things next year. And yeah, thank you to the designer for putting these amazing graphics together, and the rest of the gang. Hopefully there's no more interesting graphics that are going to come our way, Rich. But yeah, keep your finger on the pulse.
You're up this one. The Procurement Pulse. Thanks a lot. See you later.
See you later.